My name's Jason Lommer. I'm the city manager. I've been here approximately 6 years now, so part of most of the growth for Salina in these last 6 years. Like the mayor said, one of the reasons we're having this town hall for streets is, really it's the #1 concern on our community survey that we did. Streets was the #1 concern. So, in the past we've done some town halls that are more general, and like the mayor said, sometimes we didn't get a lot of attendance, but this year we're really trying a different approach. We're going to have a town hall right now for streets. In about 3 months, we're going to have a town hall on the downtown, and then another 3 months after that, we're going to have a town hall on kind of parks and open space. And hopefully, the topic specific kind of people that are interested in those topics will come to the different town halls. And we're doing a lot of stuff, but sometimes we talked internally. Sometimes we forget to share it out to y'all. So we're like, hey man, we're working really hard, but nobody knows about some of it. And so hopefully this town hall will help address some of those concerns and show you what we're working on, what we're planning, educational opportunity, and then just help to answer questions after this. We'll have a question and answer session, and we'll stay as long as everybody needs until everybody's questions are answered. You probably don't want to come twice, but we're also having a coffee with council in this room tomorrow at 9 a.m. 9 a.m., right? 9 a.m. And we'll have all the easels out and have staff kind of around the easels answering questions too. So if you have a friend that maybe couldn't come out tonight and maybe might be interested, there is going to be a coffee here tomorrow at 9 a.m. I won't read it, but our whole vision and purpose is really, how can we be an extraordinary quality of life for our residents? And we get that through good streets, good public safety, good schools, but also good parks and open space, and really at the end of the day, customer service, right? We're here for our residents. We need to be able to answer questions, explain things, and be responsive. Little Salina 101. This is kind of a exhibit of kind of showing Salina in relation to Plano and Prosper and McKinney. We have 78 square miles in our ultimate boundary, which should give us a build out between 300,000 or 400,000 people. That's a lot of people, and so how do we grow in a smart, managed way to take advantage of that so that growth benefits our residents. And it continues to be the place that you moved here for in the first place, right? 10 miles of tollway, 10 miles of Preston. That's a lot of commercial opportunity in the future for us. Generally office along the tollway, generally commercial retail along Preston. But we have to be proactive, and so I won't read all the plans, but we've been doing a lot of planning, but I always tell people from a resident's perspective, it takes a lot of work to set all this up, get the plans in place, but we do these plans because, like if you look at the Trails Master Plan, our residents want trails. Well, we do a Master Trails Plan, and then every time a development comes in, if their properties within that Master Trail route, then that development has to build the Master Trail, 12-foot wide trail through their development, and then eventually you hope as everything develops, they kind of all stitch together and you eventually have a nice path. But right now we're also working on the Arts and Culture Master Plan to get more art and cultures into the city, and then we're working on a Library Master Plan, getting ready to expand our library over here once the police building gets open. This is kind of our population growth. Inside city limits is basically everything except light farms. Service area population includes light farms. We serve police and fire to light farms through a contract, and then they have retail water and sewer, but they're technically in a mud outside the city limits right now. So currently but basically January 1st of 23, we're about 35,000 in the city. If you include light farms, we're about 43,000. Council recently updated their strategic plan. I won't read all these, but they're really general goals and really trying to be more inspirational, and then we break down specific goals within those. But we talk about it all the time, how can we be a life-connected city, connected to our residents, and residents connected to each other? How can we be a unique city? We've heard it plenty of times that nobody wants to be Frisco, right? And so we hear that, and we're trying to, how do we budget, how do we plan to be different and be unique, something that our residents would love and respect. And the whole reason we do these meetings is to get input, right? So these meetings, other meetings, have input into the budget, people talking to council, they feed it back to us, and then we adjust our plans based on feedback. And that happens through the community survey, affects the strategic plan, and then affects the different master plans. Every time we do a master plan or a design, we always include engagement and feedback, whether it's through surveys, through its meetings. We've had a lot of luck having booths at Friday Night Market. So people that maybe didn't know they were going to come to the Friday Night Market, they get a chance to provide input. We had a booth out there for the Wilson Creek Master Plan, and we get a ton more comments doing that than just having a separate meeting where people have to come just to the park. This is one of our first charts. One of the questions I always get is development paying for development. And so, this chart kind of shows, this is our single family permits, the growth of them. This is what we call permit fee revenue. And you can kind of see the growth going from about 5 million to about 18 million. And that goes in the general fund. So, right now our general fund, which provides all the services to our residents, we actually get more permit fee revenue than we do property tax revenue. And so about 33% of our services that we provide to residents is actually paid through permit revenue. And so you can see the growth over there, and that really lets us provide more services to our residents. And then on the capital side, because we do need to build roads and water lines and sewer lines, this is our capital fee contribution from development. So it's gone from about 7 million to about 22 million. And so that's a tremendous amount of growth, and all those funds go into projects to help build stuff, right? So you can have more services, more things, better roads, better reliability on water. We've spent the last few years looping a lot of water lines, and hopefully if you've been here several years, you notice your water just doesn't go out as much, and that's because we've looped it more. It has more resiliency. Added generators. We were really proud of the winter storm. A lot of cities lost their water and sewer service because they lost power, and we had backup generators at all our facilities, so we didn't go down. Also because staff was out there with hair dryers, warming up the lines and stuff. So it's a combination of planning and really good staff, I have to say. I have to give Andrew credit back there. We talk on the development side. Some of the things I hear sometimes is why didn't the developers build the roads when they built the neighborhoods, right? So I agree. And so I don't know how well you can see it, but basically, and there's an easel exhibit up here, but basically everything in yellow is new development agreements that I've worked on with council, so that when developers come in, they're not just building their roads, they're building the roads adjacent to them, or the whole plan is so this area right here is Legacy Hills, and the county and entity, well mostly the county, built the tollway extension up here, so it's a nice concrete road. It's only 2 lanes, it will expand eventually, but the idea is when a neighborhood opens up in Legacy Hills, they're not done yet, you'll leave your neighborhood that has nice concrete streets, curb, drainage, everything, and then that resident, when they move in, will drive on this 2-lane concrete O'Brien thoroughfare to the tollway and then down. And so then the idea is they'll never have to drive on an old county road that was never meant to have the kind of traffic or construction weight. And so we've done that with several new developments. When Uptown builds up here, they have to build part of the thoroughfare here. Parks at Wilson Creek has to build Sunset out to Preston, so that'll improve Sunset. Even when this property develops, they'll have to build Merrilee Road out to Preston, and these 2 projects will have to build their roads out to Preston also. So, this is all takes time. Development agreements are new, and then development has to come. We can't go back in time for older developments, but we're also working on that to do some of those roads too, and we'll talk about it. One of the questions we also get is, how many streets people do you have? Because it needs to be a focus, right? We do have bad county roads that have a lot of traffic now, a lot of construction traffic, which causes potholes. One of the things I realized I don't know why this took me so long to realize. In the winter, typically it's January, February, and that's when most of the streets get damaged. And then we usually get more complaints or concerns in March. But until it warms up, the streets crews can't really go out there with the hot mix asphalt and do a permanent patch. They can do a temporary cold mix, but depending on the weather, it pops right out, and it's not really a permanent fix. So one of the things I've been telling people this March is, hey, they're geared up, they're ready, and as soon as it warms up, which today was even a little chilly, but starting in April, they'll be able to go out there and do a lot more. But council's been really focused on making sure to provide more of a budget. So you can kind of see in 2017, they had about 4 employees in what we call the streets, drainage, and sign divisions. And obviously that's not enough people. I mean, you have a person out on vacation, you have someone that quit, and then you're down to 3 or down to 2. And so really after the winter storm in 21, we added 3 people to go to 8. In 22, we went to 11. 12 this year, and the next year we'll go to 15. So we also broke the departments down. So there's a streets division that really only has to focus on roads and potholes, a drainage division that focuses on just ditches and roads and drainage, and then a sign division that focuses on signs. So where before the streets person might be geared up to do a pothole fix, and then they get a call that like a stop sign's down. Well, they have to stop everything they're doing because you can't have a stop sign down, and then they get taken off task, and then they'd have to go fix the stop sign, which might take half a day or get them out of there, or might ruin the work they're supposed to do that day. And now they don't have that. And so over the next 2 years, we'll build out another streets crew too. So there'll be 2 streets crews. And so it's a really good investment in our streets. We'll talk about the app. It might be the next slide. I always get ahead of myself. We'll talk about the app in a minute. But if you report a street pothole nowadays, and especially if it's through the app, most people tell me it's about 10 days, assuming there's not weather issues or it's not too cold. So I would encourage everybody here to make sure you download the app, and we'll talk about it some more. Because it really goes in their work order system. Sometimes you might tell someone, but if they don't tell streets, or if you call and someone doesn't write it down, then they're human, they forget sometimes. But we also have established annual contracts for raw material purchases. We've established contracts to outsource grading and asphalt repair. We do an annual street maintenance project every year that does more of the bigger repairs. We don't expect our in-house crews to handle major street repairs, and certainly not new street construction. And we've been budgeting about $1 million to $2 million in the last few years on that kind of annual street maintenance. It's curb repair, it's panel replacement, it's crack sealing, because if we don't maintain our streets, then we'll have to do a complete repair much sooner, and then that costs more. So if you do good maintenance, you really put off a lot of that repair. One of the things we also did is in all our design standards, we increased our street design standard from a 20-year life to a 40-year life. And it cost about 10% more to do that. But then you get a 40-year life out of it, because we can't keep replacing new streets every 10 years. That's not sustainable. So, and then we have a lot more inspectors on the engineering side to make sure that it's built to our standards. I don't expect you to read this, but we're about to do the annual street maintenance for 2023. That'll come to council in April and start in May. Is it April or May? May? May award, okay. And then they'll do the work over their summer. And they really try to hit, well, there it is. They'll turn it into council on May 9th, and then all the work will be done in the summer. And they update the website for that, for the different projects. If you go under the streets department, there should be an annual street maintenance page. This was just to give you an idea, and we have a there's a little bit of slide over there, but this is kind of the different things that we did in 2022. Over 1,000 tons of flex base, 388 tons of asphalt. We did curb repairs in Tolleson Estates, Carter Ranch, Heritage, full depth reclamations on Legacy Drive, County Road 134. If there's a street that you're concerned about, put it in the app and report it. And if it's something that's an easy repair, then they'll do it soon. If it's a more fully involved repair, then they'll start to program it in the annual street maintenance budget. So, and they should be able to tell you that. I mean, we try to respond back and be realistic. We don't want to overpromise. A lot of things I've heard in the past sometimes is like, hey, they said they would do it next month. And it's like if that's a $2 million job, nobody can tell you they're going to do it next month. I mean, I think sometimes we promise things, that if you can't deliver, then we come out looking like we didn't tell you the truth. And I think sometimes people have good intentions and they're trying to make people happy, but they really, you have to be honest, right? Some stuff takes time. This is the amount of, in 2022, there was basically, believe it or not, 7,700 potholes that were filled, and that's the amount of tons of asphalt and flex base they used to do it. So basically, 1 ton of asphalt equals 20 potholes that are 2 feet in diameter, so you kind of get an estimate of how much is used on it. And then you can see the annual street maintenance repairs, the concrete panels, and then about 800 square yards, sidewalk repairs about 200 square yards, and curb repairs about 100 square yards. We've also, when they have better equipment, they can do more work. So one of the things that we bought 2 years ago, I think, 2 years, was an asphalt repair truck. So before they'd have to do it all almost by hand, and now they got a nice truck that kind of has a box on the end, the way it works, and it pours, and it's just so much faster and more efficient. So that's how they can get a lot more potholes done in this last year and a half or so. But also little things, sanding spreader, so in the winter they can sand more roads for y'all, and then some excavator and everything. And then in the future, we started a street sweeping contract. A lot of times people ask us about street sweeping. That's for all the collectors and the thoroughfares. It's really hard to street sweep inside a neighborhood because everybody kind of parks. If there's a major area that you think it's a lot built up, the public works will go clean it up, but not usually through the street sweeping contract, just because it's really hard to get everybody to move their cars out of the way and plan that, and pretty regional standard to do the collectors and the thoroughfares. Eventually, they'd like to talk about going in-house and doing that so they could do more of it, but you just have to budget it over time. And so right now we also do what we call data transfer solutions. I think if you follow social media, they did a post where there's a truck driving around, and what that truck does is it measures the road condition of every road in Salina, and then it rates it on a scale. And then that's way staff can get a really an educated decision on what roads need to be repaired and where, and not just kind of how through feeling which one they are. So they really have a lot of data. It'll give them a PCI rating, a pavement condition index rating, and then we put out those exhibits and show which areas are rated poorly and which ones are rated highly, and then they use that decision to make budget decisions. We've talked about it. This is the Life Connected app. You can do bill paying and issue reporting, and it's really cool though because a few of the power users I talked to, they said that when they put it in for a pothole repair, it's done usually within 10 days. And if your experience is different, let me know, because the great thing about reporting it is we have this asset management work order system called CityWorks, and when you go on the app, it goes straight to the supervisor, and then it goes automatically as approved into a work order into the CityWorks system. So there's no, I forgot to write it down, I lost the list, maybe you told someone that no longer works here, and so it's just so much more accountability. They can also track when you put it in. They're supposed to respond to you. And so, it's just not as much of a mystery. So it's been really, I think, an amazing thing for staff to be able to use. This is our capital improvement projects. I don't expect you to read it, but we do have an easel up here. You can kind of see, we're really working on every project in the lower quadrant is in some status. Either we're working with the counties, or we're working with TxDOT, or we're working with NTTA, and we'll go over some of these individually. But if you're curious about an individual street, after the meeting, come up to the easel and we can go over them. But there's going to be a lot of work done in the next 1 to 5 years. Staff's doing a great job working with budgeting and planning and really partners because, like TxDOT, 1385 is a good, 1385 in Salina is just a little piece of 1385. It's probably our most congested road right now. But most of the congestion is really down in Prosper and Frisco. And so, we took the lead to try to get TxDOT to put it in design, get schematics, and, they're in the process. Where'd Kim go? Is Kim still here? No. But they're in full design. They're starting to buy right away. But that project's a good example. That project's, I think, $60 million. And like I said, most of it's outside the city. Right now, we couldn't afford to do one $60 million project. And so working with TxDOT, they do take a while, but they do fund pretty expensive streets. So it is in process, never fast enough. Some major projects. So the tollway. Thankfully, the 380 overpass just opened. The first few days I thought it was worse, but the last few days it's been better. I don't know what drove it to be worse the first few days, but maybe there's some signal timing or something, but it's doing a lot better. Collin County and Denton County finished the 2 lanes going north from 428, the service lanes up to the county line, so that's opened. Really cut down on the traffic, having to go up to 455 and over probably to Pilot Point. Grayson County is working on an extension of that tollway road up through Grayson County to tie back into 121 up in Grayson County. And I think that's supposed to be done by the end of the year, but I have to double check on that. What everybody wants to know though is, when are the main lanes going to start? And so they're in full design right now. I believe they're about to turn in 90% design plans. There's one piece of right-of-way left to buy. in the main lanes, but they're supposed to go to construction in 2025 for basically 6 lanes all the way up to 428. So basically halfway through the city. The great thing is they've learned. So anybody that's been here a while has learned that, they built 6 lanes and then they put walls up and bridges, and then they go, oh wait, we need to actually make this 8 lanes. And then they have to move whole walls and whole things, so they've learned. So they're actually going to build it 8 lanes. Now they're only going to open up 6 because there's these weird pollution rules with the regional standard where they can't open up all the lanes until they're needed. But at least they'll be in. So as soon as they're allowed to open them up, they'll be there. And that's really as traffic grows and everything. So at least we'll only have to go through construction one time instead of having to go through construction. Like, they're expanding to 4 lanes in Frisco. They've done multiple expansions south of that, and they've also done multiple expansions on George Bush too. So luckily they're learning. And the timeline probably takes about 2 years to finish. So sometime about 2027 they should open the main lanes, which will really save everybody a lot of time because being on the main lanes up through here, it'll take a 5-minute drive at the most. All right, this was the road I talked about that goes from 428 up to the county line. 2 lanes concrete, it has a sharp bend and then hits the county line. Hits the Grayson County line, but it also follows the Denton County, Collin County line also. The outer loop, long term, Collin County's been working on this to have an outer loop that basically goes all the way from the county line with Denton County all the way down to their southern line. And they've been really taking the lead and trying to work on different spots for it. Right now, of course, the freeway is, nobody knows when the actual Collin County outer loop will be a freeway. But right now they're building out the service road. So what you see is, the typical 2 lanes of service road on each side. And recently they opened up the 2 lanes from, well, not recently, really in 21 they opened up the 2 lanes from Preston to the tollway. And that took a while for people to realize it was there, but it's getting busier. And then they helped us out by opening up to Kinship. So when the college opened, people didn't cut through Carter Ranch and Bluewood to get to the college. We were a little worried about that. But luckily the county worked with us to fast forward that project. And then they finished 2 lanes all the way to Custer. And so I think it's really helped to have a nice east-west through the city. Ultimately though, they're working on, let me see if I don't, that's not it. That's not quite it. But they're working on 2 lanes from Custer all the way over 75. And they told us, I think they're expected to go to construction next year on that. And so that would be really nice for people going over McKinney because there's really no good route over to McKinney if you're coming from Salina. And then they have also told us, let me see, this doesn't show it. Yeah, next one. And so they're in design right now. They expect to be completed sometime in 24. And they're going to go ahead and build out the other service lanes, basically from the county line all the way to basically Kinship. So you'll have 2 lanes in each direction separated by the future freeway right away, similar to how the tollway is right now. And so that will be, they'll start construction probably in late 24, and it's probably a 12 to 18 month construction timeline. But that should help east-west also. Long term, Denton County's looking at extending the outer loop. They don't know exactly where it will go. They have to do a whole planning process and work with the property owners and show different routes and alternate routes. But the idea would be to tie on to basically a little bit in the 428 corridor and then go basically all the way over to 35. And so eventually they'll have, they'll do the same as Collin County, probably build out some service lanes. And then one day, I don't know if that's through TxDOT, I don't know if that's through a tollway, nobody really knows, but one day there'll be a freeway basically that goes from 35 over to 75, similar to 121, similar to George Bush. Should have been 380 if you ask me, but it didn't happen, so. The mayor kind of talked about this. This exhibit kind of shows a little bit of Sutton Fields. Like I said, I really believe this is our most congested area. I know sometimes people complain about Preston, and we'll get to that too, about not being able to go as fast as they used to. But if you talk to the residents in Sutton Fields, they're kind of trapped. I mean, I'm not going to try to soften that. They are. But the city took the lead on 1385 to get a coalition of cities to convince TxDOT to get started on the design. Good thing is they fund it. Bad thing is they take a long time. in their defense, they have to do environmental studies and a lot of federal regulations, so it does take more time. But 4 lanes is coming. They told us that they expect to start in 2025, which is, it's too long if you live there, but not so far away that it's, way, way out there. We worked, like the mayor said, with the school district to get the elementary school in by this fall, because when I talk to a lot of residents, one of the challenges is when you're taking your kids to school, you had to go down 1385 and over to Fishtrap to the elementary. And then the other big concern was, of course, emergency response time, and so that's why we picked that site for our fire station number 3. It's really not a capacity issue as much as it is a distance issue. And so that should open up in January of 24. And it'll eventually be a 2-company station, so it's a very large fire station. And then the big thing is Parvin Road. And so the developer for Sutton Fields is building 2 lanes of concrete right here. And then at the April council meeting, we'll have a bid award for basically 2 lanes of asphalt from the end of this concrete road all the way over to Legacy, and then a little bit on Old Parvin too. And so we've been working with Denton County. They contributed $500,000 towards the project, and we've been working with the school district that contributed $800,000 through a developer of Mosaic, if you know the Windsong developer, and then Prosper gave $500,000 towards it. It's about a $3.2 million project. It's really a temporary fix to try to open up traffic. Eventually, the school, Prosper ISD, is going to open a middle school and a high school over here by Teal or Smiley, and this should give all the residents an alternate route to the tollway, and really should ease congestion. I expect when the road's done, because right now a lot of that road's gravel, so a lot of people don't take it. It was never really intended to have traffic on it, but people, knowing how bad 380 is and how 1385 is, people just brave it. And we have a permanent solution for it, and we are hoping, we could get it done faster. But listening to the residents, we realized that we needed to put that project together faster and have some kind of temporary relief. And so long term, we're working to do basically 4 lanes of concrete at once from 1385 all the way to the tollway. That will tie into the 4 lanes that's being done right now between Preston and D&T. And we're very fortunate because of our relationship with Denton County and COG. Denton County put $32 million in their recent bond that y'all approved towards Parvin Frontier. And we've gotten some verbal commitments from the North Texas Central Council of Governments to match that. It's probably about a $70 million project that basically 2 entities besides us will fund about $64 million of that. And that's because we have good relationships with those people. They recognize that this could be a potential reliever route to 380, especially for everybody that lives in this area and everybody lives up on 1385. And so they're willing to help fund that. The bad thing about getting federal funds is we have to do environmental and everything. So we expect that to go to construction either late 25 or in 2026, and then take about 2 years to build also. But it'll be 4 lanes. I think there's 3 bridges on it because of the floodplain stuff. But we definitely hear the residents of Sutton Fields, and we've been trying to think of every solution we can to do something more immediate and then something long-term also. So, and this is Frontier, like we talked about. So, there's a temporary solution and a long-term solution, basically from to 2027. The 4 lanes of Frontier should open hopefully by the end of the year. The bridges, bridges pretty much done on one side's open. The city took the lead to make sure the 6-lane bridge was built, so we never had to come back and expand the bridge. The original design was to come back later, which would have been really hard with power lines and existing traffic. So they built the 4 lanes, but the bridge is 6 lanes. So if the road ever expands on the 5th and 6th lane, they'll just get to tie it into the bridge. And then TxDOT's been working on what we call 1461 from Preston all the way past Custer, but then it goes around, it comes back down to 380. And that's going to be 4-lane concrete. I believe are they finished design now?
They're in right-of-way.
Yeah, so they finished design. They're buying right-of-way right now. I think they started moving utilities, I heard. And so they expect to start construction. You think it's going to be 24?
No, it's funded. We're waiting for funding.
Okay, so we're going to push them to get funding. Usually when a project's ready, sometimes they'll let it as long as they have some money. But they can't tell you for sure they have money until they hit their projects. But that should go to construction in late 24, maybe 25, and then it's the same kind of timeline. It's about 18 months to build. Construction is always difficult. We recognize that. But again, that project's, is that 60 million also? And so it's good to have partners because it'd be hard to afford all these bigger projects for just one city, but it does take time. Luckily, it's a question of when, not if, I always like to say. This is kind of a picture of we talked about Frontier Parkway, DNT to Preston. This was probably our #1 complaint in the 2020 survey, and so it's nice that it's almost done, and hopefully everybody likes it. And then staff's really taking the lead. I have to give Kim a lot of kudos. This is Glendenning Parkway, probably our next busiest east-west connector from the tollway over to Preston. This is if you drive it, it has, you come from Preston, you cross the railroad tracks, and then you do this like weird bend right here at the cemetery, and bends back around and has the shaped here. And so we're working with TxDOT to do 4 lanes concrete. They're in schematic design right now. And then they'll go into full design, and after the design goes to 60%, they'll start getting right away. But it basically be 4 lanes from the tollway, straightening out this intersection here, tying back into 428 in front of the park, coming through with another bridge, and then a bridge over the railroad tracks, which is very expensive, and then tying into Preston Road. And this is probably still 5 to 8 years. But again, currently maybe a $60 million project. And so we've been pushing on TxDOT on it, but they do have a process. But the good thing is that, they will get it done and we'll get funded. It just takes time. Owensby Parkway is another capital project that we've been working on. This is basically Preston Road over to Coit Road, and that's going to go to construction this year. This year, right? Okay. 4 lanes, concrete, and that will really open up access over to another good east-west collector, over to Coit. The developer of Mustang Lakes will eventually work with us to push Owensby all the way through to Custer. Part of Owensby is already open in Mustang Lakes, and then as they build their next phases, they'll tie into that. Choke Parkway, part of that was opened up over by Kinship, by the college, one of our first roundabouts. Hopefully y'all are getting used to roundabouts. We really like them. I know they get a little bit taken to get used to, but they are much more efficient. If you look at roads, most of the time where they fail service is at intersections. And so, you go from light to light, that's easy, and then you get to the light and you have congestion. Roundabouts remove all that congestion. You have to go slower, but you don't have to stop. And they also avoid any head-on collisions and accidents. So any accidents they have are usually, more fender benders and not life-threatening. So they're very safe once you get used to them. We're looking at extending Choke Parkway 2 lanes concrete, working with 2 developers, basically to take it from Kinship, where the college is, over to Custer. And this should go to construction in 24, late 24? Late 24? Yeah, in late 24. And so this was, that's the plan. I mean, if it's not late 24, it's early 25. We're going into full design right now. We have to get some right away, and then we're programmed to sell bonds for this in 24. So this whole grid, Owensby, Choke, TxDOT just finished Custer up to 380, which while it's not technically in the city, it's another way out to the south. We're working with the developer of Liliana to do both sides of Coit Road. So 2 lanes concrete, both northbound and southbound, from basically Frontier up to Vest Lane. And that's going to kind of reroute. You've probably seen some of the rerouting already if you drive that way regularly. And then we're also working on extending that from Vest all the way. You got it? I'll help you out. Old church, it kind of rolls, But this is I know it looks east-west, but this is north-south. It's turned, and this is basically taking Coit Road to eventually. We're working on finishing it up to Owensby, and then finishing it up all the way to Sunset with different phases. And so like I said, this whole grid will be built out the next, let's say 5 years, I don't like to overpromise. And it'll really help improve that area, because a lot of these are just the old county roads I talked about. All the neighborhoods got built, and nobody had to improve the county roads. And the city can only afford to do so much over time, but we're really taking an active lead on it right now. But that's because we're growing. And then Preston Road lighting, we'll eventually have lighting on all our thoroughfares. We're trying to take bite-sized chunks on the existing ones. And so you saw that we put lights in part of Preston. We have 2 more phases. I think one's going in right now up to Glendenning.
From Glendenning to Stonewall, 195.
Okay. And then when's the next phase going to go?
It's out the bid now.
Okay, it's out the bid.
95 the latest is out the bid.
Okay, and that'll go all the way up to the current concrete portion of Preston. And then we're going to work with TxDOT when they do the 4 lanes to the north. We'll put lighting in that too when they go. So on Preston, I do get a lot of questions on Preston Road. TxDOT has the full design done and all the right-of-way for the north extension to the Grayson County, but they don't have funding right now. Any idea? Okay, so we keep pushing them. The other question I get a lot is, when are we going to expand Preston Road? And so, I told Kim to let's just see what we can do and talk to them. And then we found out that for TxDOT and the regional governments, they have these pollution models, and they predict when you're going to need extra lanes. And so they had in there that we couldn't even start design until 2026. And we were like, that's unacceptable. So we have to modify what they call the Transportation Improvement Plan, and we're pushing that modification through. They also told us that their traffic models said we wouldn't need it till 2037. That was our reaction too. We're like, have you been here? I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I know that it's more congested. I'm not trying to say it's not. But generally, you get to still move. I mean, in a lot of high-growth cities, you're stopped dead. I mean, and so we've avoided that so far, except for 1385. That is stopped dead. I can't. But we're going to do everything in our power. I told Kim, tell them we'll pay for design. Get it ready, and maybe if they get funding, they can. It's already kind of a shovel-ready project, and maybe they'll fund it. Because sometimes some years the projects drop off, and if they have funding, they'll do a project real fast. That's our hope. If need to be, we'll finish design. If we need to make the choice to budget it, we'll budget it. Because I mean, as if we put the new lanes in, we're going to have to close lanes down to do that, and that's going to be terrible. So we're very aware of it. It's our top priority right now. People have a lot of questions on downtown. This is kind of our model of what the master plan kind of showed. I'll walk you through it a little bit. You can see this road right now is under construction. So it's the first phase of what we call the inner loop. Got a nice little picture over here, kind of what it's going to maybe look like. But the whole idea is, as we grow, we want to continue to have the downtown as the heart and soul, the center of the city. And as we grow, if you've been to some of our events, they're already kind of a little full, right? And so as we grow to 80,000 or 100,000, we don't want the downtown to be outstripped by that growth. So what we come up with is, so we're sitting right now in the annex building of the council chambers right here. When the police get their new building that's going to open in January of 24, maybe spring of 24, that's out by Punk Carter and Coit. You might have seen it out there on the other side of Bluewood. Once they move out, we're starting full design for basically a 3-story library admin building. And we're hoping that will go to construction in 25, probably, maybe 26. 24. I'm hoping 24, but you told me that wouldn't be possible the other day. I heard Kim. And so the whole idea is that the downstairs would probably be the library. There might be some other functional uses. This will be the new side of the square. And so we talked about maybe having a deli or a coffee shop or some kind of incubator space. So when City Hall's closed at 5, it's just not a whole dead side. And then City Hall would move into the 2nd and 3rd floor. And then what would happen is we'd tear down City Hall. Now, City Hall is not a historic building. It's a bank that was built in the 90s. And so there's really no, history with the bank. And so the idea would be to basically redo right now Ohio Street kind of loops around right through here one way. The idea of the inner loop is to have 3 blocks of basically one-way traffic with angled parking on it, the whole thing, to have extra parking, make it really functional, pavers, lighting, landscaping. And so this is really the first phase through here. And then once we build this building, we'll build a parking garage behind it also, which will help with the parking overall for the downtown. And then tear down City Hall and basically expand the whole square around this way. Keep the older buildings here to help activate the space, but have a children's play area, a walkable street through here that cuts through the 3 blocks. The second block here is basically owned by one person, and we'll work with them to redevelop it into commercial and office. And then the city owns the far block right here, and that'll be the long-term City Hall. Not something we can afford to do right now, but as we grow, we want to stay invested in the downtown. If you go to any of our shops and businesses, you go at lunch, you'll see anywhere from a quarter to half the people in there are our staff eating lunch. And to move out of downtown would really hurt our merchants. And so we want to come up with both short-term and long-term plans to continue to support downtown. And we're the #1 employer right now in the downtown, so it's really important to continue to do that. So you can kind of see some conceptuals. We're about to start design on this square expansion. This is kind of an older plan, but it was a pretty picture, so you can get some ideas of walkways and having a water feature, not a spray park, but a water feature. A community gathering space. We've talked about having stages on each side, maybe a large stage, so it's always set up in a small stage. But we'll get into design and we'll have some community input because we want to hear what you have to say, what you think it should be. And then you can kind of see the inner loop. If you're curious, basically everything in the shade right here is part of the construction project right now. And the idea is to kind of try to finish this basically loop here in the conceptual plan. And that's a little bit of a bigger picture, but it has water improvements, pavers, landscaping, lighting, parking. And then the idea is to have one lane of traffic and then like one multi-purpose lane, whether that's a bike or a scooter, probably just wide enough for a golf cart. Everybody loves golf carts. And then because we want bikes and stuff through here and pedestrians, we're proposing what we call reversed angled parking. Since it's a one-way street, you basically you stop and then you back into the space. And so it's much safer when you're leaving because you can see everything as you pull out. And so it's a little different, but once you get used to it, it's much safer in terms of where you have a lot of pedestrians or bike traffic. Construction, of course, y'all can see the construction. Next time if you're ever here, you can park on this parking lot over here and walk through the buildings. If you had to cross the mud, I apologize. We had gravel all through there, but they were working on it today, and then it rained and kind of ruined the walkway. And then this should, it started in June of 22, and it's supposed to be completed by the end of the year. I think we're still on track for that. Phase 2 will really be when we redo the square. We'll redo that part of Ohio and the rest of Pecan. We're working with TxDOT to see, this is the 455 route, and we're hoping to take it offline because we don't want the street designed like a TxDOT road. We want it designed to slow traffic and that, but we have to be careful. We can't take on the responsibility too soon. And then we're also seeing what we can get as trade. Maybe they can do some other road for us and we'll take this road on. They're usually willing to do that. And this was some concepts in the master plan for Pecan Street. They talked about, all pavers and wider sidewalks and improved lighting. And so we'll see where that goes. But we have to, it's not in design yet. And obviously we'll talk to residents and the businesses and the merchants to see how they're affected and what their input is first too. This is, we do have an easel up here, so you can probably see it better after the meeting if you want to come up. But this is basically all the different projects that we have in the downtown. Buildings and parks, but really the important thing is on some of the collectors. We got the developer here that he's going to help improve Ash and make it really like a downtown street, on-street parking, a wide sidewalk, a multimedia path for bikes and scooters and maybe golf carts if it's wide enough, depending on how much traffic. Once you get a lot of pedestrian traffic, you can't really let golf carts on it because if they hit a pedestrian, it's not good. The developer for Uptown is going to build Oklahoma through their development. and tie into the light on Preston. And so that'll be nice access. They're eventually going to help improve Malone also. Same developers improving Florida up through here, all the way up to through their development. And eventually they'll do Salina Parkway this way too. And then the city's working on the master plan for what we call Owsley Park, and we'll redo some streets in this area with the park. All the square stuff we talked about right through here. But while we're doing permanent replacement in the downtown and some of these streets here, we also helped improve the drainage on Utah and Cedar, and we're in design for basically up to Ash for on Arizona and Colorado, and then we'll start design next on Ohio and Louisiana. Is it Louisiana? I think it's Louisiana. But we're also doing maintenance projects here. We did a complete rebuild in this neighborhood on Lakeshore Drive, and we're going to go into design on this other piece. We hear people all the time. I mean, the downtown's been there 100 years. The streets have probably not been worked on a lot in the last 40 years, but in the city's defense, really before the growth, before we could start managing the growth and making the growth work for us, the city didn't have a lot of extra money. These streets are millions and millions and millions of dollars. And until we had more property tax, more permit fee revenue, more capital fee revenue, we couldn't sell bonds to redo them. But our plan really is over the next 5 to 10 years, basically every street in downtown will be redone. And we're working with the residents. Every time we do a street, there's challenges because, we have some people that don't want any sidewalks. And we have other people that say, you don't have a sidewalk and my kid's going to die trying to get to school. And so we're trying to find that balance as we talk to residents. Sometimes when we put sidewalks in, unfortunately, there's a tree right in the way. And it sounds easy, but then, everything's case by case basis because, if we go around the tree, we're basically at someone's front door. So we've been trying to work with people. Do we take the tree out and put the sidewalk straight? Do we, plant a new tree if we're going to take out the old tree? But it's a block by block conversation with the residents. And so we're trying to keep that downtown feel, but also fix stuff like drainage, fix stuff like sidewalks as we go through. So this is Utah and Cedar. We put a bunch of underground drainage through here. The first rain, it didn't quite perform the way we wanted. There was a lot of social media complaints, but we accept that challenge. Kim and her staff, Andrew and his staff, really went out there and made sure, we had some blockage that was causing some issues, and so they cleared that out. They're also now aware to check it more often after every rain to check, make sure that, stuff's not blocked. They also, there's a big ditch right here on Sunset, and that was full of a lot of undergrowth. We found a tree through one of the pipes. So there was a neighborhood that was feeding into there where the streets would just fill up with water, and nobody told us. They just thought it was normal for 2 feet of water to pond up. And when they researched it, one of the outfalls had a tree growing right through it. So you can imagine it's been like that for years. But now that they've taken it out, it flows better. And the last few rains, I drive here after the rains every time, and it's still hard in the middle of an intense rain to not have water in the streets. I mean, that's just, that's a hard standard to beat. But usually when I've been driving through in the morning, each after a heavy rain, there's very little water. I mean, there's some, people's backyards are still ponding. That's a grading issue more than a capacity issue of the system. But I think we've come a long way from the last few years with investing in the drainage and stuff. So if there's areas that you're concerned about, reach out to me or reach out to Kim, and we'll take a look at it and see and tell you when we're programming stuff and when we think we can improve. Beach Street is also going to be improved. This is, if you've ever been to Little Balloon Penguin, it's that area from basically the Business 289, Louisiana, over to Oklahoma Drive. That'll go to 2-lane concrete with some on-street parallel parking. So, but we did improve the parking lots on the other side of the tracks. So as new businesses open, you have some parking close by. Arizona and Colorado, we're going to extend the drainage and then do concrete streets. And we're in full design right now talking to the residents. And that should go to construction early next year? Yes, depending on how long utilities take. I'm not going to read this list off, but we do have it over here. And so let me see if I missed any. We talked about Parvin. We talked about, TxDOT's redoing 428 right now. It's in terrible shape. Staff reached out to them and said, it's been a long time for it to be just milled over here, where now it's just almost turned into mud. And they said the contractor has a schedule, and they didn't get very far on that email. Just for the record, we can't force TxDOT to do anything. And in their defense, they have a contract. The contractor kind of gets in charge of that project. But they expect that whole project to take 8 months or 12 months. Okay. Good thing is it'll be really nice when it's done. The bad thing is it's terrible during construction. I don't know how to say it. We're hoping the Parvin will take less time, but we'll see. Let's see. We talked about Frontier, Choke. We talked about the Legacy Hills development. We did just open Punk Carter over to Coit Road, so I think that's helped with some traffic. And then Interloop construction. We talked about Ash, and we talked about the Outer Loop. So I think we covered most of them.
I think there's one though, on Merrily Road.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about that the other day. We have a citizen who lives out there. And what we're waiting on now is our county commissioners from the county. It's going to be a county project, Grayson and Colin and us, hopefully some construction people. We're hoping to have that meeting the next week or so, but we understand Merrily Road now.
Yeah.
Off of Preston's going to be a major.
Yeah, so what the mayor's talking about, when the tollway finished at the county line, it ends at Merrily Road. And so people that come down Preston have been taking Merrily over to the tollway. And Merrily is just a 18-foot wide, 2-lane county road, and it really doesn't have that kind of capacity. And so we've looked at how much it costs to just put 2 lanes asphalt, and it's about $7 or $8 million. And so we really need partners to help do that. So we've been talking to Collin County and Grayson County to see if they'd be partners to help fund that. And so we're looking at it. If the counties are interested, we'll be able to do the road. If not, it's just not something we can afford right now, to be honest. So I got some, okay, I'll go, remind me, I got some questions from online. I'll go after that, after y'all are done. So who raised their hand first? I think you did over there back there.
There's already a ton of congestion at Preston and the Outer Loop. Will there ever be an overpass there?
At some point, there'll be a triple overpass. So they're planning on basically the outer loop would go over it, and then Preston would go over it, but no current plans. They will. I think it will help when they do the full 2 lanes on each side, because then there'll be 2 intersections and then there'll be free rights. But they're in design right now, and they're supposed to go to construction in late 24, early 25, and so. And that'll go from Kinship all the way to the county line on the Denton County side. And so I think that will help with some of the congestion. A lot of that's that truck traffic from the batch plants, because they go slow. Yeah, so.
Sometimes you wait 3 lights to get through it.
Yeah.
Especially in the morning and going south.
Yeah, I think that will help, because then you're going to have, you'll have 2 full lanes out and a turn lane. And then, like I said, they're in full design right now. And they told us it's funded, and as soon as the design's done, they'll be able to go to construction. So, yes?
So in the very beginning, you mentioned the growth that Salina's had over the past 4 or 5 years, and it looks pretty consistent and steady at a specific rate. If that decreases or increases, is that going to change the timeline that you're working with the other entities that we're getting 2025, 2028, 2029 deadlines?
Probably not with TxDOT, depending on if it has, because those timelines are really based on federal requirements to go through. This is how long it takes environmental, this is how long it takes for right-of-way, this is how long it takes for utility relocation. So it's really, when I first got into this business, I thought I feel like I'm pretty stubborn sometimes, and I thought I could force TxDOT to go faster, but it's like an irresistible force meets an unmovable object. And like I said, in their defense, I don't mean that badly, they have a whole process that they have to do. And it's just hard to, unless they skip that whole process by going through a private partnership with tollways and stuff, they just can't go faster. On the city side, anytime we have more funding, we do more projects. I mean, we don't wait around. We're probably, I'm a little biased, but I think our team's probably one of the fastest to do capital projects compared to most cities. A lot of cities, they do a bond, and then it'll take them 5 years to use that money. It takes ours 2 years.
Is there a chance that it'll slow down if population slows down at its rate?
We're always a little worried about that. I mean, obviously, selling bonds is based on, can you afford it? I think it's pretty easy to predict the next, 2 years. It gets a lot harder when you start going out 5 years. We had a slowdown last year because they couldn't build homes. You know, for the first whole, probably 2/3 of the year, you know, we had a lot of demand, but people weren't selling homes because they couldn't build them. So you see our permits went down about 30%, which is pretty regional. This year it's a demand issue because of interest rates, but we're holding from what we did last year. We're about 2% up. And so where a lot of cities are down, you know, 40% again. I like to think that's because people want to move here because, you know, they like the downtown, they like the, you know, all-American city kind of feel that they get when they come here. So we track it all the time. You know, I showed you the permit revenue, which can always go up and down. It's always one of our greatest fears. And so we never budget the full amount of permit revenue into our budget. We take the extra revenue and put it into one-time cost, you know, whether it's a capital project and, you know, asphalt truck, you know, stuff that's not reoccurring. And then we have you know, make sure we have a fund balance, but we also build up what we call an emergency stabilization fund. And that's really to build it up so if permit revenue does go down, that we're not just, you know, reacting real fast to trends. You know, we don't want to be the city that lays people off and then hurts morale, or make promises on projects and then go, oh, sorry, there was a downturn, we can't do that project. So we're very financially conservative when we budget. And so, yes?
So the short parkway till Kinship is great.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, it's really downhill. I mean, there are a lot.
You talking about Choke Parkway?
Yeah.
Oh, I totally agree. That's why we're doing design.
Yeah, so I mean, I saw that 2024.
Mhm.
So till that time, there are already, I think, around 100 families have moved in the Wilson Creek Meadows, and by the end of this year, it will be 225-ish.
Yeah.
So a lot of traffic going on
Mhm.
that area. So I mean, temporary.
Yeah, I mean, the streets department always tries to look at stuff. You know, some roads like Choke, you can only do so much. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, if you see the slope on the road, so it's actually like this, maybe 2-3 feet down. So if you're driving like this, so you're pushing
Yeah.
like this. So.
I mean, they'll take a look at it, and they always do what they can on like what we call level ups and pothole fills. But sometimes when a road's really bad, the only thing you can do is completely rebuild it. And you know, that's why instead of spending the money, you know, just for a year or two on asphalt, we're really going to spend the money on doing it at one time and fixing it permanently with the concrete. So while it's not as fast as we'd like, it is, you know, it should be, you know, in the timeline of a city, a year is not terribly long. I know for a resident driving it every day, it's terrible, so don't get me wrong. But we are going to improve it. From Kinship over to Custer. Basically, people that live in Wilson Creek Meadows, in that area. You know, it's a relatively new area, new neighborhood. Yeah. Yeah, on the other side of Salina Hills, you know, just on the, you know, on the east side of Coit. And so,
I mean, one of the things could be the road is so busy because the outer lobe from Custer to Preston, maybe this is not advertised as such, or I mean, the people on
it takes a long time for people to realize, because like, you know, we have a lot of people that still take 92, which is terrible. And they could go up Custer and hit the outer loop. And so we can try to look at maybe advertising a little bit more. I know that when the outer loop opened between Preston and D&T, it took at least a year for people to realize that it was there. And I think some of that's Google Maps and some of it's just, you know, being more aware of it. So we can take a look at that.
Yeah, I mean, lots of young families with young kids are moving into that area.
No, we totally agree. Totally agree. So.
So, I mean, it would be great if the timeline could expedite somehow.
Yeah, I mean, we'll try to do our best. So, Andrew will take a look at it tomorrow and see what they can do. So, yes.
What's the completion date for apartment from 1385 to Legacy?
Yeah, so we'll award it at council, assuming council approves it. I assume they will. Don't say anything. That'd be a quorum. Sorry, political joke. We'll award it in April, and is that 8 months?
Probably awarding council in April, Crossroads approve it, they'll go in April, contracts in May, start in June, it's probably about 6 or 8 months.
Yeah. So we're hoping it'll be done before the end of the year.
Another question is, I know you have all these different slides. Would you be able to make the PowerPoint available?
Yeah, I don't know if we already done it already. Joe, is the PowerPoint online already? Yes, it is. Under what page?
Under the town hall page.
Okay, is that under,
It's under government, town halls, and then I have all these posters up, and then on the PowerPoint as well.
Okay, all right, so it wasn't, because I was looking at
yeah.
the meeting.
So if it doesn't, if you don't see it, just let me know. It should be there. And we posted all the easels on the social media already yesterday, I think. So there's some good information on a lot of them, especially if you dig into them. And so, who else had a question? I think, yes?
Hi, I think I heard, I'm getting old, so I'm sitting at the back, but some talk about Merrily Road, that's where I live. I've been trying to get help with that road for about a year now. And quite frankly, it was torn up by the rock trucks going to the toll road, because the toll road comes out to my road now. Everything I've been told is what you just said. Like, Grayson County's gonna get together with so-and-so. So-and-so's gonna get together with the city of Salina. And nothing seems to ever get done.
Yeah.
I'm not asking, I know it's gonna be a while before that road is going to be finished all the way. All we would like is just a little repair done.
Yeah, we can. I know they were trying to track it down because when we did the research, I think it was actually not NTTA's construction as much as it was Grayson County's construction. Is that right, Alan? And so, did they give us a response, or they didn't give us a response?
Well, there was major running out there, and they came back through and they milled the road and, filled it in to where it was passing. Because at one point, trucks had tore up that road where, the runs were really deep, and we contacted them, and they went out there and they milled the road over.
When I live on that road. I mean, I live there, and it's never been fixed. I would say for a year.
Okay, we'll take a look at it. Well, I mean, we feel like the contractors that destroyed it should repair it. At least passable. I mean,
I agree, it's barely passable.
Yeah.
And it's getting worse.
Yeah.
Someone actually, even a month ago, painted in orange in front of those bad places, and in back of those bad places, slow down, bang,
Oh.
in bright orange. To alert people about that road.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll take a look at it. I mean, I want to be honest, we can do repairs and we can do, patches, but it's a road that really needs a complete rebuild.
I agree,
Yeah.
but it's gotta be fixed, just a little hit every
Okay.
now and then to keep it.
Yeah, have you met Alan before? Can you give her your card?
I think we talked about
Okay.
I talked to someone, yeah,
Okay.
okay.
But if
we are trying to get out there and do as many pothole repairs as we can. We try to get out there on a regular basis, kind of like part of the road.
Yeah, I haven't seen any potholes repaired.
We've been out there a couple times.
yeah.
I don't know how we did the last.
We'll take a look at it. I mean,
Please,
yeah.
please.
And so Alan will take a look at it, and if you have information, get with her and see what we can do.
We talked last week, our county commission.
Yes, I talked to Sean.
She's out of town till next week, but I talked to Phyllis James. We all agreed to have a meeting, but I wanted everybody in the same room. We're going to have that, she's supposed to be back this weekend, I think. We're going to try to have that. And I'll follow up with you, but I agree with you, I'd rather have those like this.
It's terrible and it's getting worse.
Yeah. No,
I appreciate any help you can do.
it's a perfect example. That road was never meant to have that kind of construction traffic, and honestly, cars don't tear up roads. Trucks do. I mean, over time, like drainage will tear up a road, but generally the car weight will not damage a road, even a terrible road. But trucks will definitely do damage from their weight.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Speaking about trucks damaging roads, because they do, is there any ordinances that could be put in place for weight restrictions on trucks going down certain roads?
Yeah,
I know there's alternatives that they can take. I know there's a lot of construction and development
Yeah.
going on, but if you could have some ordinances to help protect the roads.
Well, generally we'll have what we call no truck routes, but the major roads you kind of have to let trucks. And a lot of times, like we'll get a lot of complaints from like Carter Ranch, or trucks, they feel like trucks are cutting through. But every time we've done the research, they're allowed to cut through if they're going to a place inside, But as the homes build out, then they'll stop, because they're going to those homes under construction. But it's hard. We try to keep them on the TxDOT roads because they're really built more for truck traffic. But in some areas that's hard to do. Like you see a lot of trucks on Glendenning Parkway, and that was never meant for trucks either. But it's also the only route between Preston and the tollway, so we'd rather have them go there than go through downtown. Even though we do have a lot of trucks that go through downtown also.
Well, after this was built out, maybe some ordinances
Yeah.
on weight restrictions on the road.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, sir.
So, my concern with the trucks, nobody's checking to see if they're overweight.
Yeah.
I know that's what's creating most of the damage, because the trucks that are at the weight they're supposed to be, shouldn't be messing up the road. I don't see any state troopers, nobody's checking them. I'm assuming it's because they just want build, and
I can talk to the chief and see what they can do to coordinate. You're right, though, you almost never see, I don't think the state has a ton of people focused on weight measurements.
yeah, because they're just loading up as much as they can get it out there to make as much money as possible.
Yeah.
And then the roads are being destroyed.
Yeah, we can look into it. Yes, sir.
So to go to the gentleman's question about Preston Road in the mornings, especially if you're trying to go south,
Mm-hmm.
is there any ordinance or something that we could do in the city to have trucks in the right lane only from certain times to certain times?
I don't think so. I've seen that on the interstate, but that's the only place I've ever seen it. I don't know if I've ever seen that on a regular road.
State Highway 289, I don't know if you can do that. We'll need to check on it. I think because of the state highway designation, that would not be allowed.
I've heard it over and over, even my wife.
Yeah.
There's two trucks running side by side.
I hate that on the interstate too. Can you go a little faster so I can, Kim will look into it. Yeah. I mean, I know some of the congestion he was talking about was them trying to turn left onto the outer loop. And then, you get three backed up, and then, I know they're working on a timing study, so Kim could also look to see if the truck traffic's, different than normal traffic, maybe the light needs to be extended to allow more trucks through. I've been there where the light hasn't triggered, and I had to wait through two light cycles in the past too. And sometimes there's hiccups on the cameras that they have to adjust. So, yes, sir.
The Glen Crossing community
Yes.
between the outer loop and Glendenning.
Mhm.
Right now, pretty much Glendenning is your only in and out to there.
That's correct.
Is there any plan to extend Old Log all the way to the outer loop?
Yeah, we're actually working on that right now. It won't tie directly to outer loop because that's where the bridges are. But we're working on trying to get right away from the 2 or 3 properties that are really where the road stops now to tie into that, basically that service road that goes for the batch plants. Yes, and so we're also looking to see if we can redo some of that concrete for some of the batch plant stuff. But is there any idea of a timeline, do we think?
That's kind of what you project we're talking about is this presentation. It's all tied together. The timeline is, it's in design, it's the right of way position I'm on.
It's an active project, so I don't want to overpromise. Yeah. Yes, definitely, because we want another way out for you, especially when we go to construction. I mean, that's several years away. Well, I think we're going to help use the storage to cut that road through, and so that's the good thing about development is when we see a development like that and we're like, oh man, we want that road to go through. They're going to dedicate the right of way, and I think we're going to make them build part of the road, and so that's sometimes where development helps you. The biggest challenge is, the county when they build the other part of the outer loop needs to build the other part of the loop, around because, it's kind of a little rough right now. So, but I think it's coming is what I'm saying. So, yes, ma'am.
The rest of the half of the pond right here,
Uh huh.
when's it gonna be done?
You mean from here to Arizona?
Yes.
Before the end of the year.
Today. Oh, okay.
Huh?
They started tearing it up today.
Yeah.
It's going all the way to Arizona. Right.
Yeah.
And then when will Arizona be done? With the construction of the government center?
Oh yeah, I guess it would be, huh?
From Walnut.
I haven't talked about that.
Walnut, the pond will be
And so that's probably in late 24, 25-ish time frame. You know, we don't have a lot of specific timelines with the other downtown streets, but, you know, we're trying to work, you know, 2 or 3 at a time, and we hope to build out the whole grid of the whole downtown, I hope within 10 years. You know, historically, like I said, the downtown's been there forever, and, it needs some love, you know. But now, the good thing is now we have more resources, and, you know, what I hear from council is that the downtown is one of the most important things for them and for the existing residents, and so we've been focused a lot on it the last few years. So, someone else? Yes, sir.
The street lights, you had one slide which showed the plan, the main thoroughfare. How about the other thoroughfares?
Yeah, so anytime we build a new thoroughfare, if we build both sides of the road, lighting will go in with it automatically. And it's sometimes hard to add lighting if you don't have both sides of the road done, because we don't want to put it in the wrong place or get hit. But you know, like Kinship has lighting. Do we have lighting on the roundabout at Choke?
A little bit, that part's gonna be designed now, put lighting on the outer loop.
Yeah, on the rest of the Choke Parkway from the outer loop to Kinship. Preston's going to get finished up this year. You know, the hard part is, you know, like on the tollway, we've been talking to them. You know, if you look at the whole tollway to the south, there's really no lighting on the service roads because you can't put lighting on the inside because that's the tollway. And you can't put lighting on the outside because that's where the power lines are. You know, it's hard to have the lighting with the power. And so what we've been working with TxDOT, or with NTTA, I'm sorry, is I think they're going to use those regional poles. Have you ever seen the really tall ones that have the circle lights that light up the whole area? And so we're really working with them to put those in with the expansion. And we want to look at the lighting pattern to make sure they'll be LEDs, so they'll be directional. They won't shine in people's yards. But we want it to cover the service lanes too, not just the main lanes. But you know, it's you know, a lot of these cities and us long term, you know, they have lighting everywhere except one of the busiest roads people use. And the outer loop's the same issue. You know, there's some of the outer loop doesn't have power lines. I was wondering if we could put them up faster than the power lines. And then till the power lines they can't go in. I don't know. I was gonna tell you that the other day, Kim. I was driving. I was like, I wonder if we could do that. But we love lighting. You know, the reality is once you get used to lighting, it's harder to drive at night without lighting. And you know, I think they said lighting increases safety by like 25 to 50%. You know, just from accident control, because you can just see so much better with lighting. So, yes, sir. Huh? Yeah. So we asked some people to submit questions. I don't know if there was any others, but this is the ones we had. So I wanted to read them in case if they're here or if they're listening. People asked when the completion date of the tollway reaching the outer loop. We talked about that. They hope to go to construction in late 24, 25, and then finish up basically 18 months to 2 years for the main lanes. They asked what would be at the intersection of each corner of the outer loop. You know, really nobody's submitted plans at the outer loop in the tollway yet. Most likely mixed use, commercial, office. We had one concept plan for apartments, and you know, I don't know if they'll end up doing apartments or not, but they submitted their concept plan before we changed the zoning because they wanted to invest in, so we'll see what they do. We get this a lot too, if there's any plans to have a Salina zip code for Sutton Fields. Unfortunately, this is we don't like this either because, you know, I think every normal person thinks of their address as their city address, except the post office. The post office thinks of your address as your postal code, and where you get served by your post office is your code. And so Sutton Fields gets served by the Aubrey post office, so they have an Aubrey address. Of course, that doesn't make sense to any of us. And what's worse is if you're so the postal offices are divided by Dallas and Fort Worth. And if you're in the Dallas postal code, you can write Light Farms, Texas like it's a city, and they will deliver your mail, from what I understand, even though Light Farms is not a city. If you write Salina on the Fort Worth office, Aubrey, they will not deliver your mail. And I don't think it's because they're being stubborn. The way they explained it to me is each district has a drop-down menu, and if it's not on the list, they can't pick it. And apparently since Salina is in most of, all of Salina that has a postal address for Salina is in the Dallas district. And so you're not just dealing with a different postal office, you're also dealing with a different district. And that line is right there. It's the same thing on 380. You know, it's an Aubrey postal code for Union Park, even though they're in Little Elm. We had the same issue, you know, with Frisco or Little Elm addresses. And so I've done this in the past, and I've tried to talk to congressmen. I've tried to talk to the post office general. I've tried. It's the federal government. I can't get any movement on it. I'd like to say differently, but man, it's interesting because even talking to congressmen, you know, they're like, sorry, that's kind of a postal issue. I'll try to follow up, but I mean, I think even they have a hard time. Once you get into the big federal agencies, they have their own rules, and they just don't. There's just no way to fix it that I see. Yep.
And Dallas County,
Yep.
which doesn't make sense.
Yep.
We've been talking to Postmaster General one time.
Yeah.
You can't touch that, it's like school district.
Yeah.
It's tough, it's frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really frustrating, especially because, you know, if you live in Salina, you want to be able to tell people you live in Salina. You know, you probably tell people that visit your house and say, hey, you know, Aubrey, Texas, and they're like, I thought you lived in Salina. And like, I do. If life isn't complicated enough, you know, Sutton Fields, where you have Denton County instead of Collin County, and Prosper ISD instead of Salina ISD, and now you have Aubrey Postal Code instead of Salina Postal Code. So we get why it's confusing. It's
None of our online revenue for things that are purchased, none of that revenue, tax revenue, goes to the city of Salina.
It should, because we have a map for that.
But it goes from 7 to the zip code.
It's supposed to, because the comptroller has an exhibit from us that has our map, but we'll double check it. Can you put that on your list for Ogie to check? Oh. That's correct. I know. If anybody has a solution, I'd love to hear it. I mean, I've gone down that rabbit hole 2 times and been unsuccessful. It's very frustrating. This question asked if they want to know if there was any repairs going on Texas Street, which is the street over by the old middle school. I don't think so, but I've asked staff to go look at Texas Street to see if there's any big potholes or anything that they can look at. 3 or 4? Okay. And I'll send an email to them also. And then progress on the park behind the old middle school, which is the Owsley Park. We're about to start master planning.
First public meeting will be the end of April.
So we'll start having public meetings on what the residents want in Owsley Park. We have some concepts and some ideas to get the discussion started, but it's really going to be up to the residents and what they see they want in there. But we kind of see it as an urban linear park to enhance the downtown. But that means a lot of different things to different people. So completion dates for Parvin asphalt, you know, we talked about that. Should start this summer and be done by the end of the year. The 428 full asphalt repair from TxDOT, you know, that started and it's going to take 12 months. I'd like to see an improved response time on patching potholes. The last one I reported to the city 7 years ago took 7 years. You know, I can't tell you what happened 7 years ago. I will tell you if you use the app and you tell me it took 7 years, I'm going to be very disappointed. But please tell me before 7 years is up, because we kind of expect 10 to 15 days on that. And if we're falling behind, we'll put more resources towards it. If it's not winter, can't fill a pothole in the winter. They can patch it with temporary, but you know that's like they have to come back every other week, unfortunately, until they can do a full repair. And then also we hear this a lot, so what I usually ask is if you can be specific on which road has the issue, because we've come a long way, I think, in the last 2 years, but that doesn't mean we're perfect. And so, you know, if you hear someone, you know, tell them about the app, and I always like to ask them, well, which street are you talking about? That way we can go, you know, sometimes you have generalizations, and we really like to deal with the specifics as much as possible. Other question asked about when the Preston Road in Salina is going to be widened to 6 lanes. We talked about that. You know, we don't have a timeline, but we're trying to take the lead on it because 2037 is not going to work for us. That would be terrible, terrible, terrible. So we will keep trying. Who's responsible for County Road 52 from Greenway to the outer loop? That is a city road. I think parts of it are in the county, but we claim it. I don't think all of it might be in the city, but we were actually talking about this today. I live in Greenway also, and there's an old county road that kind of, it's the quickest way back south, and so none of us, including myself, go north up to 428 over the tollway. We always take the windy, bendy county road because it probably saves us 3 to 5 minutes, and we always joke, if you ever seen the memes where they design the nice sidewalk like this, and then it turns like this, and then what does everybody do? They 45 it. Like nobody does that, right? And then so I always joke, people then try to put like plants in the way, and they still cut through the plants. So sometimes you have to think about your design. But we have a potential project that's going in that area. I think we're going to try to partner with them and either do a full asphalt repair or look to see if we can do some concrete options. Eventually, Salina Parkway will tie into Light Farms Way. It'll bend over to the east and tie into the outer loop at Light Farms Way. And then this County Road 52 will just be a 2-lane road that stays there between the property lines. And so it's definitely needed. They also asked if there was going to be another way out of Greenway to the east. That's all floodplain, and so we can't cross it. And so they'll have access. They have 2 points of access out to Salina Parkway, and then they can go north or south, but there'll never be an east connector because it's a 100-year floodplain, and we can't build a road in a 100-year floodplain. So I think that's all the questions I had online. Do anybody else have any questions?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Now, in regard to Ash, is Ash going to be eventually widened there?
Yeah, so the original plan was to make Ash a 4-lane road. When they built the 2 lanes they have now, the plan was that was going to be a 4-lane. But as we look at the downtown, the whole point of the downtown is not to let people speed through the downtown. You go fast on Preston, you go fast on the tollway. Downtown's not meant to go fast, and so we've reimagined that road as basically we're going to work with the developer for it to be 2 lanes with a median, on-street parking on both sides, a multi-path on one side that will be wide that can be for bikes or scooters, and then a sidewalk for pedestrians. And so it'll be a very urban street section with trees and everything. And the developer that's building to the south there on Ash, we did a development agreement with them where they're going to do all that work. They'll also add a right turn lane onto Ash from Preston that's missing right now. And so the whole point is to have a more beautification, slower traffic, and more walkable.
Second question. On Oak,
Mm-hmm.
I know there were plans in the past about the bridge there that comes across the creek.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Work has started in the creek there.
Mhm.
But that bridge was supposed to be developed or
No,
changed. You can't change.
Coming home by the church? That's going away. We're going to remove that as part of the outcomes.
So with the Owsley Park master plan, we plan on turning both streets, east, west, north, south, and then opening up the creek. So there won't be a culvert there anymore. But we're going to put a pedestrian bridge in, so pedestrians can cross, but not cars. So we think that will make it a much nicer linear park and walkways and stuff. And again, our goal is not to have a bunch of traffic through the neighborhoods. And if they are, then everything goes slower. And a lot of our new street design, one of the things I didn't mention is, it sounds simple, but we took a lot of our residential streets from 31 foot to 29 foot. And the whole idea is, the smaller the street is, the slower people have to go. Because they feel, it feels tighter. And so, one of the number one things we hear from residents is that people are going too fast through the neighborhood. And so we think through good design, Kim's really good. One of our complaints we got online was, we got too many streets that are, really long and straight. And then, if you have a long and straight road, guess what? People go faster. And so in all our new neighborhoods, we shorten the block lengths. We put stop signs in. We make them in the street and maybe go somewhere else. Because we don't want long, straight streets with heavy traffic. And Sutton Fields is probably a bad example of that, where some roads that probably should be collectors were residential streets. And unfortunately, it's before my time, so I can't change what's there already. But in new neighborhoods, we don't allow that kind of stuff. So, anybody else? Yes, sir.
Excuse me, while we're planning on new roads, it's not going to be exclusive to Salina, like I see Little Elm and McKinney and Frisco, but the schools, like Parvin specifically, but possibly everywhere else in Salina, when there's 2 lanes on Parvin heading to middle school and a high school, it's going to back up on both morning drop-offs and afternoon pickups.
Yeah.
Can there be a shoulder added to all roads that are going to be with schools?
Well, I think we're going to, that's on the Prosper side, so we don't really control what the school does there. But I think we've already started having conversations that they need to put at least right and left turn lanes in. I don't think it's part of this project, but when they build the schools, they need to put in left and right turn lanes. If the timing works, we're hoping to be under construction for the full 4 lanes, and then of course, if we build out a 4-lane section, it'll have left turns and right turns all built in with it. Yeah, and then, huh?
Quarter mile long. I mean, in the schools at 3 p.m., you know they're long. Parents, they're not going to stop. They don't care. They're going to park on the road.
No, I know.
They're going to do it, like you said, the sidewalks are going to cut the corner.
They'll look at some studies, and they might be slightly longer, but they won't be as long as they like that, because I know it's a terrible condition, but it's bad for typically when you watch it, 15 to 30 minutes, and it's hard to add that much turn lanes for 15 minutes. But if it's 4 lanes, what you hope is that it stacks up on one side, and then people can still go through on the other side. Is what you hope. And we work on all our new schools. We work with them to have at least a decent amount of stacking, internally on the site. Some of the old schools don't have that, but new schools are usually better about it. Not perfect, because so many people take their kids to school now. That's something that is a relatively newer phenomenon. Compared to when I was a kid, and mom's like, "Get on your bike, go to school." But people worry about their kids, including me. I joke, but we take our kids to school too. Because that's at first they miss the bus all the time. But.
One more quick question about Parvin. What's the plan for the asphalt paving? Like, I know at one time, at one of the meetings, it was mentioned a possibility of shutting down the road Parvin completely, or is it going to be?
I think we're shutting it down, right?
The goal is to shut it down so we can move it faster. However, with the 428 project going on, we're going to revisit that issue. So that's a means and method. So when we get with the contractor, we'll talk to them and see if they've got a better suggestion of what their ideas here.
Even if it's one way, I mean, like, at most, even if it's one way, or versus even having a stop, so it's horrible.
Faster, as fast as we can get it built. That's the goal.
Yeah. We'll take a look at it.
Yeah.
Okay. I love the new one-way lights, though. We never had that before. You had to have flaggers. They're a little weird, but they work. Yeah. Yeah.
One other quick question.
Yes, sir.
In that, here, the short part of it is,
Right here. This is Choke right here.
yeah, there is, yeah. So part of it is city, part of it is county.
That's
and
correct.
Then again, city and county. So, I mean, how does it, what's the,
Well, right now, if you look at this exhibit, it shows pieces that are TxDOT, pieces that are county, and pieces that are private. But when we build the road, we'll take ownership of the whole thing.
okay, so it's all green.
That's correct. Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate it. We'll be out here by the easels if anybody has any questions. Thank you for your time. And if you want to talk about it again, you can come in the morning. Or if you're interested in the next town hall, please come to that too. So hopefully this has been worth your time and you learned some things. So thank you.